sort of. All right, we'll call the Personnel Board meeting for December 5th to order at 2:49. We have a quorum, so I guess we'll do the minutes. And that's the only thing I didn't read, minutes. So are they the 27th or the 20th?
Well, I didn't have them for the last meeting, so we haven't approved the 24th minutes yet.
Is it
Yeah,
24th of October? The September, is it the 27th or 26th?
Oh, I mean, September 27th, we didn't approve
Okay.
yet.
okay, so that's,
Right.
was the date.
All right.
All right, so, does anybody have any corrections or anything like that?
No.
Is there a motion to accept?
I make a
them?
motion to accept the minutes for September 27th, 2017 as written.
Okay, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And how about the October 24th ones?
I make a motion to accept October 24th, 2017 minutes as written.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Old business, the Personnel and Policy Procedures Manual. So you, Chris, had sent an email to
Right,
Betty Ann and me, and
because-
so I forwarded it to Matt because I figured he
Right.
was clueless on.
I was just trying to figure out what was going on because, like I said, my email, I went through this and everything that we had tried to fix or whatever wasn't touched. And then everything that had said Personnel Board was changed to Administrator. And they removed the, then they added the name Advisory, which was fine because the Selectmen had said Advisory type would be part of the title. But they removed public hearings. There was no public hearing to review any changes. And like I said, there was quite a few things that we didn't even discuss with Mike. So I was at a loss because I had what our role was, like I mentioned at the last meeting, and then it was like this here not taking any of our changes. So bit confusement and I don't know what's going on.
So my intention is that the final product will have to include Labor Council or
Right.
Town Council's edits around after the act was passed by town meeting, the Administrator Act.
Correct.
But it should also include your suggested edits. So that all has to be reconciled into one working document. It's going to be kind of hard for people to read through. But that is the project right now. So one of the first things that I want to do, because I think it's pressing given the world we live in now, is that book right now doesn't include a social media use policy. It does have what is actually a very strong information technology use policy, and it governs the use of the town's network and the town's connection to the internet. So we're covered there, but we're not covered, or we haven't really solidified into an explicit policy, is what do you do, and I've lived through this example, what do you do if the employee decides to light somebody up on Facebook, because they don't live in town, they live in another town, they get involved in politics in their own town, and they send a few nasty messages on Facebook that may use inappropriate language, or by the way, they work for a department that has a badge, and because when you tell Facebook what your employer is, there's usually a logo or a symbol, it happens to be the badge of the department.
Yeah.
So then the question was, is it my Facebook account or is it the town's? Do I have the right to engage my elected officials or not? Kind of First Amendment discussion with the employee. And because that town didn't have a policy either, you kind of had to, page through the personnel policy and find something that would apply to that situation, which, because there was a badge involved, was conduct unbecoming. But, it's one of those things, though, where we really, if you read the school department's policy, I asked for theirs, it's an excellent policy. It's written by, professional counsel, and we'll probably absorb most of that into ours, so that we're on, first of all, we should be on the same page. We should have all the same policies where we can. Their policy is very focused on, because it's a unique problem for them. I'm a coach at the high school, and I have friended my players so that they can see, pictures posted from games and the schedule and all the rest of it. But see, now you have an adult that has a Facebook connection to a minor, and there's going to be rules around that. So that's a lot of their policy is we don't need to do that. But there are pieces where we do want to pick up and mirror. So that needs to be one of the edits. Your round of edits as a board, which I assume were approved, Madam Chair, that it was
Well, we
your
were trying to
consensus?
put it all together,
Yeah.
and,
All right.
and we got,
So it would be helpful to me,
sidetracked.
we can't get to it today, obviously, but at your next meeting, if you would go through the edits you had previously suggested,
Okay.
and have this board, send it, well, I'll be here, I'll take notes, but sort of formally say what your advice would be on those parts of so that I can include them in the edits that we need to do.
Okay.
I think that the working document has the town council's view of how the Administrator Act is going to be incorporated into that. And I'll double check that to make sure I agree that I want to do all that. But I think I made it clear that I value this board, so I want to continue to put all these things in front of you and get your input. And actually go along with your recommendations, not just listen to them.
I did have a question, which we have an issue with forms, okay? I want to know how we want to handle it, because there's so many different forms they're using now we don't have here, and I'm not crazy about really updating this every time a form is updated, so
Right.
it's like when I pulled that part of our manual for the classification, I said, this is an example, but it's not the latest because it would be controlled by such and such. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I was looking for, is like, what do we want to do with forms? Because we still haven't received quite a few of the forms, and some have to be fixed with the timesheet ones and things like that. And I'm sure eventually you're not going to be doing timesheets, you'll be doing computers, you know what I mean? So I'm concerned with, like, what do we want to do to handle something like that to control our forms? Any suggestions?
Yeah. Some of them are in the appendix already.
Correct. But some are, I mean, when I was trying to identify and figure out,
Well, there's some around the
What they're
usage of
doing.
the sick bank. There is a prescribed form that Labor Council will insist we use for FMLA.
right, which I,
So there's actually a series of forms that you have to
and I
use
think
for
there's only a
FMLA.
reference to a link, a web link for
Yeah.
that, which is great, because then you get the
If the
latest
web link
one.
is still valid, yeah.
Yeah. Really?
Well, they
It's been a
change
long
all the time,
Well, they shouldn't for something that's
yeah.
a norm, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're normally going to use it. But what I had looked at is between attachments and appendages, it's really, what they're doing is, it's, most of those forms are really like an attachment per se, versus, policy type thing for the appendages. So I was trying to like renumber and rename those and group them together. Because even like the one that says, you get travel, meal, and mileage policy. So you get the policies, but they're not grouped. They're over here with H, I'm sorry. That's- It was.
If it's a policy, it
It's
should
basically,
have
it was
its
a
own.
course, right. Right, it has its own,
And
okay?
those sections
In the book.
within here?
Right, they do. But when it comes down to the form that they're using, it was like, why are they using like the same form that they're using? I'd have to go through it. This one here. See, here's meal expense reimbursement policy. If you just put down what the policy was and then just say what it is for meals and travel, etc. And then over H, combined with H. Here's H. Travel policy, and the travel policy has its own form. But those others, you know what I'm saying? It was like, okay, using this, is this a reference? And it has mileage here, it has meals here, so why aren't they using this form for all those and combine that? So that's what I was looking to do, is sort of combine certain things that don't need to be separate like that.
And tie it back to the written policy. So that'll be on our list of personal
look
board
at.
edits.
So that's what we're working on, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if the board could do that, because I'm gonna go, we've got the health insurance policy that I'm gonna talk about today, and then we have the social media policy. I'll be putting those big blocks in place as we go forward with the Board of Selectmen. So this is ready for today's conversation when we get to it.
Okay. So any more on the procedures, policies and procedures manual?
I guess so.
Okay.
The only thing is I'm going to ask is, Betty, when you were doing the edits, was it in documentation form, where you could email it? I'm just trying to think what you sent Mike and we lost, you know?
Yeah, assume I have nothing that you said,
Right,
Mike.
I'm just assuming that.
I could find it, but it would,
You know?
it's easier
Well,
for
I
me.
remember, I actually handed him some physical papers. I don't think I emailed him.
Because, like I said, I never remember seeing the
If I
edit.
can check his hard copy files, that's a little bit easier to do.
You know, a lot of it was forms.
Okay, so basically what we have for our notes is that's about
And then
it.
it was that whole section on grievance, I think I handed him.
Yeah, that was seen through council, the new.
I've seen a separate document that says grievance procedures.
And is it
on it.
bright yellow?
Pretty sure I had given him that.
Now, was that
And then he
a,
discussed it with town council.
Town council.
Yeah.
was that a discrimination grievance
Just
policy, or was it
Not
No,
just
just a workplace?
Yeah.
Yeah. I might even have some of that still here.
Well, that was another thing, the employee evaluation form, the new format.
Yeah, now,
Yes.
you had that? Because,
Because that was missing too. That's what I'm saying, when there's a lot of these
Yeah.
forms, to update this whole thing for forms, we should really have a, but do you have this one here that you use? Employee evaluation? Because that was supposed to be the latest one, which is not in the personal.
Which
Yeah,
is-
I've seen some of these floating
Okay.
around.
yes, the staff had developed that, which was nice. We had a staff review.
Yeah,
And getting their input and stuff.
Well, it's easier than just sort of,
Check it.
Randomly,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
yeah.
right.
And sure, it's a little work, but it's worthwhile doing.
So where I stand with the staff on this is, and I've seen that. so,
Okay, they are using it. Because they said they were last review
Well,
time.
no, they haven't been using this stuff. They haven't done a formal evaluations of employees in a while. So,
Than last year.
Well,
No,
in
but-
the last couple of years, we've been reported to that, oh, yes, they're on their way.
they're spotty, they're spotty.
Yeah.
Some departments did do them,
Yeah.
and they're in my office, but
Yeah.
it wasn't townwide thing.
Yeah.
It is a necessary, and I think preaching to the choir, it is necessary to have a standard evaluation process done every single year, because you have to stay ahead of that, one employee who doesn't perform whatever. You can't create an evaluation process and institute it only for that one person.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
that-
there was an
any
article in
discipline you
today's
have-
paper about the dog officer, animal control officer
Yeah.
in some town, and it was like, she was fired.
Right.
Bingo.
She was suing the town.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the evaluation process wasn't done right, and if all the warnings and notices weren't done right, she'll win.
Yes.
Get reinstated. So, based on the time crunch that we have, when we do our budget this time of year, we do, the FinCom. So what I said to the staff was, next year, the evaluation process will be 100% of what it should be. This current fall, what I've asked them to do, and I've gotten a few back already, is do the core. Punctuality, responsive to the public, da-da-da-da-da. The basic, just soft skills stuff. Do you come to work when you're supposed to? Do you behave properly? Just at least let's get the foundation for that and use the personnel policy book, section 5.1 in there, as a rough guide as to what it is you're evaluating. The next year, by this time next year, we should have all the job descriptions updated, and the evaluations will be based upon instruments that have been derived by the board and by the staff that tie back to the job descriptions in much more detail. That, to me, is the most manageable way to handle the workload of getting the evaluations done on a timely basis, on an annual basis, without trying to get it all done. It would be the only thing I do if I did it right now. And I'm
Right.
afraid that that's not the best use of, scarce time, because everybody's clamoring for a budget message to come out before the holiday, so.
Well, we had
That means
Never
I have
comes
to-
out that soon.
I have to have some, they want it that soon, because they, want to get started on their stuff, so.
I think we had suggested November 28th as a deadline, remember? There was a
Yeah.
deadline we wanted to enter into, but I mean,
I'm looking more like
Mon-
January 1st for this basic
well, that's...
core, and then next
right.
year.
Well, like I
will be-
saying, as far as like, we wanted to put a date in to get everybody to make sure that they do it by
Yeah.
that date. So your suggestion on dates would be good, because I can understand the workload around this time of year.
Yeah, November makes more sense, because then anything that stems from the evaluation process could be dealt with before the budget season starts. That would be
Okay.
the smartest thing to do.
So we
And then
should,
we would have, if we have any intention to move somebody up a step or anything else, that information would be justified from the evaluation process and become the basis for the budget.
okay.
So we're not doing any job descriptions?
Not today. We have, at this point, I've gathered just about all of them in their existing form. A couple of stragglers came in later, and the most change is going to occur in the police department. So I've been trying to. I gotta get through the chief's ratification tonight, the swearing in tomorrow, and then we'll start to look at the job descriptions for the lieutenant, the sergeants, the patrolmen, together as with the new chief.
Yeah, but that's not part of our role,
Right.
because they're human.
I know you have facilities manager down here. Isn't there a gentleman that does highway and managers half and half?
Adam, yeah.
So I've got them
still-
all. Every
Okay.
hat that Adam
All right.
wears, I have a job description for each one of those
Okay.
hats.
So that's what it was, a half and half. there.
And we're going to be updating that one considerably, because this is one of those obscure facts of the legislature and how it has proceeded so far. They unanimously passed requirement extending OSHA standards to the municipalities, which has never been the case. And we will now have to get everybody up to speed for occupational safety and health. The facilities manager and the superintendent of the highway department will have the heaviest burden in terms of training and certification. So they will both have to have the so-called OSHA 30, which is a 30-hour course with OSHA for their job description. So we're going to be reviewing all of those in light of this change in the law. We're seeking a state grant to pay for the training. So it won't be coming back to the taxpayer here. The application's for about $8,500, and it's for 4 or 5 courses. OSHA 10 for everybody, OSHA 30 for the supervisors. And then there are some confined spaces, hazardous materials training that needs to be done with highway.
Do they come and inspect the buildings?
Not at this point. I think nobody's really thought this through. They're gonna pass the mandate, and then they're gonna figure out what they're doing. So we're gonna get ahead of that and get all the certifications in place so that our people will be trained. Now, when it comes to trench boxes and building safety and all the rest of that, that's a secondary consideration.
That's an old building.
Yeah. I mean, we just did the energy audit on that building, so it would make sense to do the safety audit after that. And then any changes that are common to the two are the ones that we should prioritize for capital. And it would make sure they're not in conflict, because that does happen. But it's a drafty old building with terrible lighting. Yeah,
Well, I know.
yeah.
Okay. So do we want to move on to new business? Or is there any other old business? New business?
Any business?
Okay, so we'll review your draft health insurance benefit policy. Do you want to preamble it at all?
Now, preamble it real quick. I'd rather be proactive than reactive, but there are definitely days when, issues will come up and we'll say, well, why isn't there a policy? So I'll drop the things I'm working on to work on an obvious gap that needs to be addressed. Health insurance was one of those areas. The town didn't have a rock-solid policy that had been passed by the selectmen or town meeting in any way, shape, or form. And so it's complicated to administer health insurance because everybody's life is different. They had a situation, well, what if I was married, then
Yeah.
divorced, and then the decree
Yeah.
said this, and then I had children by all three of my spouses, and, who's covered, who's not covered, and it all becomes, you've got nothing to refer to, you can get lost pretty quick. And you can never answer every question, but you should be able to answer the most commonly occurring questions. So this policy is an attempt really to do two things. One is deal with the administration overall of the health insurance offer. So that includes reporting requirements from my office to the selectmen and by extension the town meeting. And all the usual things like when is open enrollment period, what is a qualifying event, all those eligibility and administration topics. And then we get into sort of the weeds of it, which is what is the offer, what are different beneficiaries' rights under different scenarios. So active employees versus retirees versus spouses versus dependents, and surviving spouses in the case of someone fully vested passing away. So that's really kind of where we go with this. Now, there were a number of times when somebody would come in with a case and Mike Kaczynski would write a letter and say, well, this is what we're going to do in cases like this. So those letters were added up and made into one document, along with an agreement we just reached with retired Chief Foley that was ratified by the Board of Selectmen last meeting. We wanted to create an avenue for those retirees who are fully vested, and that's the important part. Under 32B, they're entitled to health insurance for life in the town. Give them the opportunity to leave, because it would save the town money when they're gone, but allow them to come back so that we're not creating a disqualification under our policy that we can't really sustain. So there have been cases decided by Massachusetts courts under 32B. Once somebody is a retiree and they're drawing on their pension and they've fully vested into all of their rights as a retiree and they go work in another state, we really don't care. Because under Mass law, those people are retirees that are fully vested into all the rights they had under your policies and their contract, in this case, an individual employment contract. All of those things need to continue. But in the case of somebody who intends to work for 5 or 6 more years and have a family plan, to the town of Douglas, that's $110,000 worth of premium. What can we do about that? Well, we can let the chief join his new employer's policy, but then return to us, and then Maya came back, our insurance carrier came back to us and said, that's actually perfectly fine as long as there's no break. As long as...
It's employment, yeah.
Yeah, right, and coverage, really. So if he were to not stay in that job, he'd have to pay for COBRA until he can get back with us, and there would be months of enrollment change. We've also got 2 policies in place. One is waiver, the other is opt-out. A brand new employee can waive coverage, and they get a small stipend. It's $300 a year. Under what conditions? When is it paid out? And then opt-out is different. Opt-out is somebody who already has an insurance relationship with the town, and they decide they want to leave it. The incentive that we pay them is somewhat larger because those are, the way it started was those were the people we wanted to encourage. If you wanted to go on your spouse's insurance and leave the town, we wanted to backfill that with pretty generous stipend. The waiver came after that. All of that needed to be formalized into a written document. So that is what is attempted here. There's a lot of words, numbers and references to law. We've been through this with Labor Council twice and with various interested parties, with the school administration once and with our finance department here once. So it's wide open for edit. It's got to go through the Board of Selectmen 3 readings. I introduced it last meeting a week ago. Their first reading is tonight. And so there'll be 2 more meetings, a full month of time to review this and bring questions forward. Chances are it'll improve the document. Because there's no pride of authorship. We just want to make sure we get it right. It's not a bad first swing. So if you have any questions now, I'll entertain them. Otherwise, we can go over it at your next meeting, I guess.
Either of you have questions on it now?
No, I thought it covered everything.
Well, my brief reading, I saw the retirees getting 50%, which is, that's typical, I think.
It's
That's
in
a
the-
state law minimum or something like that.
So I won't remember this because I wasn't born yet. But in 1964, the town of Douglas adopted Section 9B of Chapter 32B, which granted retirees insurance benefits by a pretty big margin. Back when health insurance was not expensive at all, right? And we all know what it was a blue plastic card, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah, that was the only one.
And it was just a little gimme benefit. Now today it's one of the most expensive benefits provided.
Right.
One of the fastest growing line items in the budget. But to answer your question, yes, the town adopted the portion of the state statute that went 50-50 with retirees.
Okay, so most towns did that,
That's right.
because the town I was involved with did that too.
Yeah.
But they had voted it in the 90s or 2000, at a town meeting, so I don't know if you remember. Or I guess they tried to up it for the
It used to be
retirees.
80%, and then they lowered it to 50.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now,
There's other options you could have chosen, but the town was stuck with 50-50. It's not a bad deal, really.
No, it
No, it's
isn't.
not.
Not at all. On the family leave and the military leave thing, it says, and maybe I didn't read it clearly, and I'm not remembering it, but it says a percentage pay premium. And I guess I didn't understand what that was, because I have a question mark after it. What is, and I thought the family leave, that the people went on COBRA immediately, that the town didn't have to carry them on the insurance coverage.
So technically, family medical leave, qualified family medical leave, is a preservation of employment. The employment relationship with that person has not been terminated, therefore that doesn't trigger COBRA. They stay with us on our family policy or single policy, on our active employee policy. The percentage premium means that because family medical leave is unpaid, they must remit to us their 20% of the premium co-share that they have as an active employee. So right now it's 80-20. They're responsible for getting that to us if they don't have any form of benefit time. So there's layer after layer, right? You're granted protected leave, which means we won't discharge you. We're going to guarantee you can return to that job or a similar job. But if you have sick and vacation time, you can use it while you're on FMLA to get a paycheck. We would continue to deduct your health insurance co-share, premium co-share, from that. So this written policy will formalize that. It's what we've always done, but it will make that a formal policy that's going forward. And if you were to happen to run out of paid time, you would then be responsible for remitting to the town what you owe under your share. This is the safe way to go when you have a relationship with somebody who's in FMLA or has asked for extra time under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's an accommodation being made, is to maintain their benefits so that they don't have something to come back at you with. It changes a little bit when that leave comes to an end and you are not fit to return to duty and cannot meet the basic performance requirements of your job description, at that point the employment relationship is severed, and then you go on COBRA or find other coverage that you might be eligible for. There's an intervening time. None of this happens toot sweet, as they'd say in Woonsocket, right? So you got 2 or 3 weeks there. What is the status of that person? We're going to just continue to carry them until there's a clear answer to that.
Is there in the policy anywhere, and I know it says it somewhere, what, who's qualified to get the health insurance benefit? It's in terms of how many hours a week they work. I didn't see it in here. I think it's in some policy or
It's
the
in our
bylaw.
bylaw.
It is? Okay.
So there's a reference here in section 4. Active employees who are eligible to enroll in the town's standard health insurance offering pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B.
Yeah, I said defined in Chapter 32B, but what about defined in something that's already in existence in the town, like our bylaw, the personnel bylaw, or which...
Your bylaw is going to mirror the state statute because the state statute would trump it anyway.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what you're following. So 19 hours you don't qualify, 20 hours you do.
But a full-time employee is 30 hours? It's crazy.
If benefits are available to anybody 20 hours, over 19 hours, 20 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the state you live in.
Well, it's the town I live in, I think.
No, that's the state you live in.
Where I worked, it didn't do that, so, I mean,
But
you were 35 or 40 hours a week, that was it.
Yeah.
Years ago, you could get on the town's insurance just by being a selectman or
Right.
being on the
Yeah, and they got rid of that,
conservation,
yeah, that was good.
Well, I think you had some part-timers that were,
Mhm.
you're what you now call limited part-time employees. I think we're on the insurance policy, and now they're not any longer.
Well, that's why everybody volunteered for boards and things
Yeah.
back then. Now they don't.
Yeah.
Well, again, going back to my previous comment, because back then it was not the expense item it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's, those are my questions. So we'll wait and hear from you again, or do we want to just
well, on this is an open.
memorize this? or-
No, this is an open invitation to comment
Yeah.
until their third reading. After their third reading, it's
Yeah.
adopted, and it will be, I hate to use the word, but engrossed or
Yeah,
incorporated
So,
into the personnel
the fifth-
policies and procedures book.
and the 19th,
5th to 19th, I think it's January 2nd, right? If they have a meeting that night.
okay.
I think we're going to talk about that tonight, what the schedule's going to be. New Year's Day's not a big holiday anymore, so.
I know, a lot of things aren't big holidays. You know?
Senator Claiborne Pell used to dress up in an orange suit and go calling in the city of Newport.
On New Year's.
On New Year's Day.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, if you read biographies of Lincoln, he
Right.
did the same thing. You know? That's what they did back then.
And for those of us who knew Senator Pell, he probably was alive when Lincoln was alive.
No, my uncle was senator for Rhode Island, and Pell replaced him, and he was in his 90s, I think, when he retired. My uncle was, so,
Gosh, who was that? Oh,
Green.
Oh, Theodore Francis Green.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when Claiborne Pell was just a young lad.
He was a young man indeed. And who ran against him, do you remember?
Oh, Pastoria or something, where he was already, was Pastoria senator at that point too? I don't know.
I believe he was. I think that first campaign, John Chafee ran against Claiborne
Oh,
Pell.
really? Yeah. Well, Chafee got in eventually. So. Yeah. And my brother-in-law voted for Chafee when he was governor back in Rhode Island.
Oh, really? We can go on and on with this trivia.
Yeah, yeah.
Senator Pastore did Senator Chafee a huge favor because when Senator Chafee won his seat,
Yeah.
Senator Pastore actually technically vacated his seat
Early,
early.
so he got
So that
seniority.
John Chafee was the most senior member of his class enter the Senate.
Wow.
The things that little states have to do to get anything.
Any recognition at all? Okay.
He didn't need it. He eventually did fine on his own. But it mattered with seating and other things that
Yeah, right.
on committees.
Okay, so do we want to pick another meeting date, or do we want to gossip behind Matt's back when he leaves? Or
Please don't.
Oh, pick another date?
yeah.
Sort of first of the year? Oh, Miss Whitmer.
The selectmen would be due to meet the first week of January, right?
I don't have 2018 here, guys.
Oh.
Do you have
Oh,
something?
my phone's in the other office.
December's chopped off.
Is Christmas a Sunday, though?
I think it's a Monday, isn't it?
Yes, it would be a Monday. So January 1st is a Monday. So the selectmen would be due to meet the 2nd and the 16th.
Second. Okay. So those 2 days are good for you because you're here anyway, right?
I'm here anyway, and I would recommend that,
Before the second, or the
right,
second.
before
yeah.
the third reading of the policy, if you have comments, I would want to get them.
Okay, so why don't we try January 2nd? Is that good for you? So January 2nd, okay with you?
I'm sorry, January what?
2nd.
Second, January
That's a
2nd.
Tuesday.
Okay.
2:45.
Yeah. Very good. Let's write that down.
Hopefully by then, we can have some of this deliverables.
For some reason, my phone has all these people's birthdays happening on January 2nd, which it says my brother's birthdays. It will be his 114th birthday.
Wow,
I know.
quite a milestone.
I bet he's still paying his National Grid bill. My father's been gone for 24 years, and the National Grid bill still goes in his name because I've sent them so many copies of the death certificate, and they're just so awful at following up on anything for you that he's still paying the bill. He's gonna haunt me
Well, is he getting
because he
the,
couldn't even escape National Grid after he passed away.
you have to be careful because he might have it at a senior discount.
Oh, jeez.
I'd look into it.
Well, when we sold the house,
Okay.
I don't know what the outcome is, so as far as I'm concerned, you might still be getting the bill. There was, the new couple that bought our house had difficulty setting up the new electricity account because they said, well, we need to talk to John, we can't. And I was on the phone with the lady,
Yeah.
trying to help
Sorry, but he's
the buyer
passed
out, and I said, you haven't been able to talk to John for 20 some odd years. The problem is you just don't pay attention to the things I've sent you. I've sent you 5 original copies of death certificate. Every 2 years I try to do this, and you don't get it done. So I said, you know what? You can chase him for the bill, because at this point, I've tried. It's hard enough. So, their lights are still on when I drive by the house in Rhode Island. I see the lights are on, so I assume something worked out.
I could see a new person taking over and getting it changed in their name, but to chase your father now.
Yeah, that's it.
24 years?
Gosh.
Yeah. Tried and tried. All right.
All right, make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. A second.
And says, I won't see you until Christmas, after Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
to you too. I say aye. I didn't hear aye.
Okay. I didn't ask for it, so.
I think you got it. I actually think you got it. I saw